Okay, so we're going to be working on chapter 8. And a few of these terms I recognize often they are used outside of the way in which I want them used within class, if that makes sense. Not necessarily incorrect, but not correct in the way in which I want them to be used. So let's start first of all with suggestion. Suggestion often gets used not in the way that I'm looking for it to be used in class. And how I'd like it to be used in class would be, how are commercials suggesting something without saying anything? Okay, so an example would be the sounds you might hear or the images you might see without the people saying anything, without the words flashing on the screen. How are commercials suggesting a feel? That's what we're going for here. So, all right, first, and I use this example all the time, I'm probably going to use it in the feedback. This is what I always do is, first, I always think of suggestion as when you hear the sound of birds in the background in a commercial, what is it suggesting? I highly doubt it's suggesting you're in the house. Birds usually suggest that the characters are outside, that you are outside. You know what I mean? So what is the suggestion that it's giving you? You can hear this even in TV shows or movies. The certain types of sounds will suggest something. Colors will suggest something, or the lighting might suggest something. So like if you're watching, you know, one of the Max security commercials, it's dark. It's suggesting that we're in danger. You know what I mean? See what I'm trying to do there? We can also do maybe sounds like Christmas music is suggesting like it's the holiday season. You'll notice when you watch TV shows around the holidays, you know how you have music that takes you from one scene to the other? Oftentimes, if it's a holiday episode, there's something about the music that suggests it's the holiday. So pay attention to that. Next time you see one of your favorite episodes during the holiday season, it's one of the holiday episodes, listen for that because it's going to suggest this feeling of the holidays, as it were. Okay? See how they do that there? All right. Images might be the same thing. Maybe clothing. Maybe it might be very neutral clothing because that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at something else in the commercial. I guess that's good. There's a few different ones, but for now, let's just focus more on the sounds and the images that you're getting that are going to give you a feel versus not give you a feel. Let's see. Colors will also create a mood too. Blues are sad, maybe green. Ooh, another one. You're going to see that when you look at the pharmaceutical commercials, the drug commercials, they always use the color of the drug in the people's clothing, in the background, in the flowers. You're gonna see very often they use the sense of color. So it creates like a suggestion. That's what it is, using the colors as a suggestion. So think about that when you're looking at your commercials. Where might they be using, again, images and colors and sounds to make you feel a certain way? That's what we're talking about, not the dialogue, not what they're trying to like say or words flashing, but the actual images around the feel of the commercial, because there's a lot of work that goes into that. If you're curious about how colors might make you feel, go ahead and take a look at the lecture notes, and it shows you different cinema magic and how certain colors make you feel a certain way. Much like you can see when someone goes back in time, they have a certain way in which the lighting works, where you could tell it's a certain, genre or era, I guess more so than genre. All right, so just think about that. Suggestion, let's be honest, suggestion is used in all different places. I used to live in Vegas, and in Vegas, when you would go into like Caesar's Palace and you're out, or I say you're not out, you're in the actual casino and you're gambling, but it makes you feel like you're outside. They've got the pillars and the blue sky, and they're pumping in fresh air to suck out all the cigarette smoke so you don't want to kill yourself. Anyway, so it's a very like, oh, and then you could be there all day and not know, and you leave and you're like, oh my God, why is it so dark out here? I thought it was outside. I thought it was in the middle of the day. They're giving you a suggestion to keep you playing. Anyway, that's not really fully exactly how we plan on using it here, but that is an example of how suggestion is used to manipulate. So anywho, just think about that. Smells are used for suggestion too. If you didn't think about this, whenever you go to the mall, you You smelled something when you heard of mall. You smelled something when you walked into the mall. They do that on purpose. And what did you smell? Probably two things. Auntie Anne's, they call it the pretzels, or the cinnamon, right? Same thing as the smell of popcorn when you go into a theater. Another one is, sorry, I had another little alarm going off on my phone. Another one would be when you drive by Burger King, because they're flame broiled. The smell, they put the smell out so you feel hungry when you go by. Anyway, very suggestive to get you to come in and buy and purchase. They do the same thing with like end caps. I used to work in retail, and we would put certain things at end caps. We would try and get to sell a little bit more. Maybe it wasn't selling. Maybe there was a sale. Maybe we had too much. Maybe it was suggested by the higher ups, whatever the case may be. That's kind of another way of suggestion. The way we are going to be using it in class, please apply it to commercials. But I do also want you to recognize how other ways in which people and things and companies try and suggest things to get us to go in and buy. They do that in houses too. Oftentimes you'll go and who's looking at houses nowadays, right? But sometimes if you go in, they'll bake cookies, so it makes it feel like home. That's why they do staging. They stage it to suggest what it might look like when you go in there. So anywho, those are just some ways. Let's talk about sensationalism. You already know what sensationalism, but I'm going to give it a little bit more for you so that you understand what I'm looking for when we talk about sensationalism in our commercials. Sensationalism here is way more exciting. Not just like, ooh, excited, but I'm talking excited and big, and there's a gunfight, and there's this. And, you know, when we talk about sensationalism, we're talking about big stuff. For the commercials that we use in this particular assignment, in our KCAs, or how I would like you to use it in the commercials that you use in yours, if you use sensationalism, how are they using something really big and explosive in this, and whoa. Sensationalism is also often used in the news, where they will cover something that they recognize will get more views because it creates an emotional feel or a reaction from people. It's the goal, right? Sensationalism is to get you to be engaged in some way, whether you're raged and upset or happy or sad, whatever the case may be. If you're feeling a certain level of emotion from something, whether, you know, it's an advertisement or I don't know, it could be a post, right? Rage bait. Right? So the idea is to get you suckered in. That's sensationalism. In the commercials, often you will see sensationalism is when they're talking in the news. They talk about, oh, it was a gunfight versus some bill that was passed that was just, just as important on a different level. It's not as sensational. They're probably not going to put it on the news to get you to watch. They'll probably put it in the news when you go to watch, but they're not going to make that as the advertisement that you're going to want to look at. Okay, they're trying to get you in. Okay, go ahead and take a look more at how they use sensationalism. We have Bill Nye the Science Guy in there, how people use it in news and all that good stuff. The whole point is it's the way in which it makes you feel emotional in some way, but big emotional, okay? Not just like, oh, it's an M&M's commercial. I feel all happy because it didn't melt in my, melted in my mouth, not in my hands. We are talking big, okay? Explosions and this, and like, whoa, we can feel it. There are parts in there that you will see where you will go, oh, that's sensationalism. So keep that in mind. Sound bites. Sound bites are when it's like when someone has a long speech or a long statement or a big conversation, and someone takes something really small and uses that in some way. You could use it for positive. You could use it for negative. Sometimes people will use the soundbite to get you to watch the show. Like Barbara Walters will be interviewing somebody, and they just have a quick little cut of something that somebody said, and you go, "Oh, I want to watch that." They use sound bites, clips. I guess clips. Scratch where I was going to go with that one. Sound bites are definitely smaller pieces of something larger. You'll see the 1,000 Points of Light from George Bush. I'm Not a Crook from Nixon. These are things that are not necessarily what I'm looking for, but these are examples. What I'm looking for when we talk about it in commercials are how are they using these sound bites? Again, we can talk about maybe an interviewer has a clip they pull from the interviewee. There's probably another word for those two people, but we're going with it. Think about like how certain companies have sound bites, slogans. I guess slogans would be the thing that kind of you remember when you hear, which is also part of Gestalt principle. So sound bites, the thing I'm looking for here is a smaller piece of something bigger. And I would suggest, if you're going to use examples, news and interviews and things like that, where they pull a sound bite from something bigger. That would be my suggestion versus slogans. Okay, so anyway, that was a hint. All right, when we talk about framing, I gotta say this 100 times. It is camera framing. It's the camera. I'm gonna get them real close over here. It's the camera framing is what I'm looking for. Not the way someone framed a question or framed, a statement. We're talking about camera framing. We're talking about angles, where'd it go, how'd they do it, what was the point behind it. What we also want to see is, sometimes they'll have a camera angle where, they make something seem bigger than it is. An example might be, I have another example for, it's part of sensationalism, but they might have the camera where some weatherman's like, it's the wind's blowing, he's like, it's windy, oh my God. And then you see people walking behind him in shorts going, what's this guy doing, right? Like, the camera angle made it look big and sensational, right? But in reality, it wasn't really true. Sometimes they do that, sometimes, not all things are out to get us. Often it wants our attention. All things want our attention, okay? So the camera angles, the goal is to get our attention in some way, to feel like a feeling, right? That's the same with colors too, right? When we talk about suggestion, the colors are suggesting a feel. The camera angle tells us what we want to look at, right? When we talk about commercials, how are the camera angles giving us a feel? How is it bringing us in? What is the camera angle doing that makes us want to buy this product? Is it spinning around? Is it, the way it's up close on someone or far away? Or, what's the goal of the camera when it comes to commercials and how it's getting us to want to buy the product? That's what I want you to tell me. All right. Fuzzy words. Oftentimes fuzzy words get confusing when students try and explain it. So I'm going to try and get you some examples. So fuzzy words are saying something, but it doesn't really say anything at all. Like when they say made in America, the reality is the product might have been assembled in America, but the pieces probably came from some other country, right? So it's a fuzzy word when they're like, it was made in America. Well, it might have been assembled in America, but the parts came from somewhere else, right? So we have to be mindful of when we hear certain things come through, it's a fuzzy word and it's intended to be a fuzzy word to make you kind of go, oh, but it doesn't truly mean what it says. Another example is they say 4 out of 5 dentists suggest fluoride in your toothpaste. And they're like, well, okay, hold on. First of all, yes, but just because a toothpaste has fluoride, does it mean all the other ingredients are good too? So if the suggestion of these 4 out of 5 dentists are suggesting this product because it has fluoride, is it only the fluoride that they are suggesting? Or is it more to it, right? So that's why it gets kind of fuzzy. And if we're going to talk about studies and research, as we have before, the 4 out of 5, where did these 4 out of 5 come from? How big was the sample size, and why only 5? And where did the 5 come from? And how do we not know there's not a bias on their end for getting paid or being, I don't know, maybe they were, the reification of it being Colgate made it to them go, oh, it's Colgate. Of course it's good. See, so there's a lot to be asked. When we think of fuzzy words, think of things in which something is said that's not quite, explained all the way. It doesn't give us everything. It's very fuzzy. You know what I mean? Like, okay, it's 4 out of 5, but I feel like there's more to that. Where's the science behind that? Okay. Some vague declarations that, as we know, you got a friend in the diamond business. Do I? Tell me, explain more. That's kind of fuzzy. I don't understand what you mean by friend. Tell me more. Or we'll leave the light on for you. Well, of course you are. The freaking building always has that lights on as part of the safety mechanism. It's not like you turned it on for me because you knew I was coming. These are some kind of fuzzy words. Crisp, full-bodied, you're worth it. What does that mean, I'm worth it? Of course I am, but what do you mean by that? Okay, these are some examples of fuzzy words. See if you can try and find those in the commercials as well. Most specifically, when they're using those things to try and get you to buy, because it's very like Oh, these dentists told you to buy it. Oh, it's Americana, you should buy it, right? These things that pull you in a certain way, you should always question it, because there's always something behind it as to why they might be using that specific, or that, I'm sorry, not specific, that particular word, which is not specific. It's fuzzy. There's a little bit more to that, okay? And I have to, okay, we're going to talk about product placement. I have to say this. I'm going to say this so many times. Product placement can only happen in a TV show or a movie. That's it. You can't put product placement in an ad. That's an ad. An ad is an ad. Product placement is when it's not an ad. It's just sitting somewhere on a shelf, very obviously in a TV show or a movie, where it's there and you can see it and it's obvious. That's product placement. It makes you want to purchase the thing because you're like, oh, Seinfeld, uses Minute Maid. I should have Minute Maid, right? You're going to notice there's a picture of the Seinfeld thing. You'll see the Minute Maid is very obvious, but the cereals are turned so that you can't see what they are. Keep that in mind. Look for that. Same thing, you can see the sunlight very obviously, but you can't see what the waters are or other things. So just keep that in mind. Keep your eyes on this stuff because there's a thing behind it. Somebody paid to have that product sitting there. If the product did not pay to be shown, it should not be shown. There's legalities to that. So Pepsi in the movie Big with Tom Hanks paid to have their vending machine there. Not Coke, Pepsi, right? Pepsi bought a lot of stuff in the 80s. You'll see it also in Back to the Future. Pepsi was in a lot of places. Sometimes you'll see products with funky names, like, Pepco instead of Pepsi, and it looks like a Pepsi can. Yes and no. The product was not set there on purpose for someone to see, but you see it's obvious what it is, right? So, but they changed the name so they don't have to pay to have the product on the show, okay? You'll see FedEx in the Castaway. That was a huge thing. He was a FedEx pilot. Like, I'm curious to know how much FedEx invested in that. And sometimes it's weird because I just recently saw a commercial about a girl driving a car. They did this with the Barbie movie too, where the car itself, oh, you got to drive the Mazda, The Mazda, it's almost like the movie was made for Mazda because you're driving the Mazdas all over versus some nondescript vehicle. And that turns my tummy. It makes me not want to watch it. It's almost like the movie was made for the product. Not saying that's what Castaway was, but it was pushed a lot. Could have been anything else. And maybe there was a reason why they used it. I don't know. I got to do a little research on that. But always be weary or cognizant or mindful when you see something so blatant that you're like, I don't know how I feel about that. Was the movie made for the car, or was the car just in the movie? Okay. All right. Same thing. Pepsi again in Back to the Future. Nike was a big one. You can see it in the shoes. Anyway, so when you think of product placement, TV shows and movies, and that's it. You can't put it in an ad, so do not use product placement in your advertisement assignment. And if you did, take it out. Okay. Gestalt principle. Gestalt principle is what I do in class. It's the images and the songs and the things that get stuck in your ear, or the way in which you become engaged in multiple ways, right? Okay, so one would be maybe asking questions or slogans that beg to be answered, right? Jingles and repetition. So da 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 da. You know exactly what that is. I don't have to say it. You felt it. You can taste the hamburgers right now. I gave that away, right? So these little things, they do that on purpose. Da 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 da. There's no words. There's no words. You know exactly what that is. Okay. Some things use their name in it so that it reminds you, like Red Bull gives you wings. Okay, which is really smart because the jingle and the word in it reminds you, and you're like, what was that one thing? Sometimes I'll see a commercial and I'm like, I love the commercial, but I can't remember the product because I'm so involved in the commercial. Sometimes the insurance commercials will do that. I can't remember which commercial it is because it was charming or funny or something. And I'm like, what was that? So if I'm looking for insurance, I can't remember. I have to go look it up. Anyway, So oftentimes, again, something might beg the question, expect you to answer, well, what's wrong with this picture? Why wouldn't you try Crest? These things are like, oh, okay. Images that don't make sense, something that doesn't, I'm like, why is this weird? And it's going to be the dogs talking, or, Old Spice commercials kind of really paved the way for making it obvious. They did a great job back in the early 2000s with their, Old Spice commercials. It's become so good that you see oftentimes, more often now than you ever did before, because I show you a lot of the 80s commercials. They are not as ridiculous as the ones we see now. Some of the ones we see now are so bonkers, you're like, I don't even know what I just watched. It almost messes with your brain. Kind of makes you feel like you just got high, right? You're like, what was that? That's the Gestalt principle. It's to get you to feel so like, wait, what was that? What did I just see? Trying to make sense of what we're looking at. That's an example of the Gestalt principle, or something that your brain wants to finish, and usually that's a jingle. Think of all the jingles, right? Kit Kat commercials. There's all kinds. That's the Gestalt principle. And I try and do that when I do jingles, when I'm trying to play the guitar, or even if I'm showing images. That's a little bit of Gestalt principle, in the sense of when you see it, you're trying to like, what is she doing? Why is she showing this? It helps you to like want to know what I'm trying to do here. That's the goal. Ta-da. Subliminal persuasion. Information that's meant to affect people in an unconscious level. I'll be honest with you, there's no real science behind subliminal persuasion. There's no real science behind it, but everything that we do here above is all subliminal in a sense. It makes you feel a way subconsciously, whether it's colors or sounds or jingles or whatever the case may be. So pretty much the whole goal throughout all of these commercials is subliminal persuasion. So anyway, we did pretty good on that one. I'm actually pretty excited. I think that was it. If you have any questions, please let me know. If something doesn't make sense as we go through. Other than that, all right, very excited.